Welcome into Newhouse Afternoon. Max Gifford, Dylan Byer, Nico Horning back with you here. And it's election day.
It is.
It is?
That's the biggest. Come on. You're going to be that person? You're living under a rock a little bit here in 2024, Max?
Sure. No. I promise everyone in the world I voted today, just as everyone should vote.
Yes.
I agree.
Is that the extent of our election talk today?
Yes, it is.
We can spend a whole 10 minutes with it if we want to.
We're getting political. We're doing a tight 5 minutes on which side will win. All right, Nico, you be.
Man.
Nico's actually in the red polo today, so he might be making a statement. I just want to point it out. Dylan's wearing the blue jeans.
Yep.
Blue
and you're wearing
jeans.
red and blue.
Yeah, exactly. You see, I'm the moderate one here. Only one that's moderate on the show, neutral.
True. Well, big day. Go out and vote if you haven't already, no matter who you're voting for. I would go vote. I think that's the most important thing for our country right now. But starting the show off a little bit, before we even get into sports, another conversation. The weather outside, Max. We'd love to talk about the weather on the show to start off.
All right, so
it's 75 degrees here in November.
All right, so for those betting at home, we talked about the election. That cashes out,
Yep.
and the weather, always a cash out. I mean, that's got to be like minus 10,000 odds at this point, every single show that we're on.
I'm sick of this weather. I want it to be Syracuse, cold, windy,
I will
snowing.
say, Halloween to November 1st was like a complete change.
Yeah.
It was
for
a
sure.
complete change in terms of weather.
Yes. I thought for a minute you were going to say, like, Aaron Rodgers should be benched for a second.
Well, he
but
should, but we'll
Hey,
get to that
the
later.
Jets won this week.
I can't.
This team.
All right. Well, to start off with, Syracuse basketball's back. The men's squad played last night. Not what we had hoped for Syracuse, and then the women's team starts tonight. Initial thoughts from the men's game, because there's a lot to break down. It was a ugly game. Syracuse had to play from behind. It was a rough look for the Orange.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of people today on this show maybe expected the headlines around Syracuse to be just focused on, elephants, donkeys, talking about the election a little more. I don't think anyone had in their bingo card us to be talking about the Dolphins as much as they were, because Lemoyne came to play against Syracuse. I think I'll just start there. They came to play very similar to how the men's soccer team did just a couple months ago when they actually beat Syracuse, a team that won the national championship a couple of years ago. I know Lemoyne's only in their second year Division I, but boy, are they not overlooking some of the opponents they have to play.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always the one to jump on somebody's back and be
Really?
worried.
No.
Never me to do that. I am not worried by what I saw. I know a lot of people, they finished the game and they woke up this morning, they're like, oh, who is this Syracuse team going to be? I understand Lemoyne was leading for most of the game, and it took really the last 2 minutes for Syracuse to get in the lead. But I really wasn't expecting anything else. I mean, this is the first year without Judah Mintz. The two notable guys that we know are Chris Bell and JJ Starling. Everyone else is kind of up in the air, question mark. This was a game for them to get their chemistry together. We talked about it last season, even freshman year. Chemistry is something that has been lacking from this program for a very long time, and that's the nature of the team now with NIL. So many guys are coming and going. But I'm really not that worried.
But what are the two exhibitions for then, if you're talking about chemistry?
By the way, those exhibition
can't-
games.
And what's the offseason for?
You can't build chemistry
I agree with
in
Dylan.
two exhibition games. You also have Donnie Freeman, who's a true freshman playing in his first college games. He's great. He's going to continue to get great all season.
He wasn't anything fantastic, though.
But I wouldn't expect him to be first game, true freshman.
The exhibition.
Number 6 recruit in the country, I think you can expect a little more. Against Lemoyne. I'm just going to say it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
But
I'm not worried about him.
Maybe I'm taking.
There's some other players I'm worried about.
Maybe I'm taking the Dylan role today, but I am scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared about this team.
I am too.
Right now, they are going to lose to Colgate next week. This team is going to lose to Colgate next week. If they show even a resemblance of how they played today, of how they played yesterday, they are losing to Colgate, and I have zero doubts in my mind about that.
That's fair. So, Dylan, you brought up the chemistry a little bit, and I think a lot of teams are dealing with that based on the transfer portal stuff and everything. But it's a very valid point, because this team, it's going to take a certain amount of time for them to find their chemistry. You'd hope it's early on in the non-conference play. Obviously, it wasn't last night. But what stood out to you guys, whether it was an offensive problem, a defensive problem, everything. I mean, this team had 4 or 5 turnovers in the first few minutes of the game.
Yeah, the turnovers are something you could look to. I also think 3-point shooting, another very bad thing that needs to be worked on.
But going off of that, is this going to be another year where they got to make the threes to win?
Yes.
Are we looking at that, or is that too early to call?
I've said that since since freshman year. They went 4 for 22 last night on three-point shooting. The game of basketball has changed as we know it. Big men aren't needed anymore. It's all about the three-point shooting, and that's where Chris Bell comes into play. Now, what I liked from Chris Bell's game last night is that it wasn't just all three-point shooting, which he relied so heavily on last year. He was going into the paint, drawing fouls in the paint, which is how he's evolving as a player. But ever since Joe Girard left, we're missing that bang three-point shooter. So I'd like to see who really develops in that role, because it's one that's needed in college basketball.
Now, you can argue Chris Bell, his stats on paper show that he's been sort of that replacement for, I guess, that Joe Girard archetype, if you will. The issue is he's just not consistent enough.
No.
And you just have to hope and pray that it's not the same song and dance again with Chris Bell.
That's the problem. And he was the second best three-point shooter last year in the ACC when it came to percentage. And he can build on that. I mean, he's one of the best shooters. He's just got to be more consistent, because there were a lot of games last year where he would, chuck him up and Syracuse would lose. But when he made them, Syracuse played well. So the goal this year is obviously to not have that happen again. I think there is a lot more versatility on this team this year. You can look at Jair Davis. He had a great game, double-double.
Him and Chris Bell, I think, two guys you can look to that if they don't, Red Autry said in his press conference, they don't have Jair, they don't win that game.
Right.
But also Chris Bell was big with that takeaway at the end to force that offensive foul.
I honestly think if Chris Bell does not make that takeaway, Lemoyne makes a shot and wins the game. From how they were shooting all game, Lemoyne could not miss a shot.
So that's the other thing. They shot very well.
Yes.
I think you got to give credit to them, because no matter who you're playing, if the team makes baskets.
But it always seems like the team's going. It always seems like the team makes baskets against Syracuse.
It always seems that game, but
true.
I think this game, the reason why I'm not looking at it so negatively is because I think it was more of an on game for Lemoyne than an off game for Syracuse. There wasn't so many negativities I can point out about how Syracuse played, rather than crediting what Lemoyne was able to do.
Would you have the same answer if Syracuse lost that game? See, that's a different story.
It's a great question. That's a great question.
It is, but when I look at the roster and I look at who put the points up, and I look the depth was a problem last year. No one came off the bench scoring. Davis with 22 points off the bench. The one thing that I could say, which has been a consistent theme, is how Syracuse starts games. Syracuse has never started a game with a 10-plus point lead. That's so crucial, especially in ACC basketball. Once you get into those games, you got to come out strong and you got to take the lead.
And the only games I can really think of last year where Syracuse actually came out and dominated the start was against North Carolina, the game they won at home. Yeah. You were just waiting for something bad to happen. And then the game against NC State, where they ended up pulling out the win at the end, but NC State made that little comeback in the second half on the road.
Did they start hot against Clemson at home last year? I believe they.
I think Joe Girard just shut them.
He did, but I don't know if it was right away.
I remember Clemson absolutely dominating Syracuse when they were at home against for the final game of the season.
Yeah. Anyways, slow start. The turnovers were apparent, but also Chris Bell had a three-point foul call. He shot one of the Lemoyne players on the three-point line. There's a second guy who did it. I don't know who.
There were two of those really early.
Those can't happen, because that's 6 free points right there, which leads me to the free throws. Syracuse shot like 55% from the free throw line.
Good.
That's inexcusable.
That's
inexcusable.
I mean, my great-grandfather, I've said this a couple times, he always says, you live by the three or you die by the three. I think, watching the game last night would have been like his worst nightmare.
The
fact,
sure.
Missed free throws and only three-point shooting.
Yeah.
And for Syracuse, a lot of missed three-pointers because they couldn't make any of them. Dylan mentioned it, only making 4. Right. So you talk about not being able to make three-pointers, not having the ability to make free throws either. Chances are, 9 times out of 10, you're not winning a lot of those games.
Definitely not. J.J. Starling, also a slow start. Jaquan Carlos, not really apparent offensively. Had some assists. That's going to be how he's going to build into this team this year. But looking forward a little bit, right? Colgate next Tuesday. This team's got some time off, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. What's got to change going forward? What's got to mesh a little bit better, I think, down the line? Because if you look at this team overall, too, you don't have that go-to guy, I'd say, which is a good problem in a sense if you can get the team to culminate around each other, but they don't have that right now.
Well, I've been saying this since I watched that Clarion exhibition, and the fact that I believe that Jaquan Carlos is the most essential player to this team, because you need that true point guard. I don't really call Jim a true point guard because he played so much of that, hero ball, and he tried to, take it all himself. Whereas with Jaquan, you have that facilitator. You have a guy that can drive. You have a guy that can shoot as well. And we saw none of that last night. So part of that is the key for him to really take over that leadership, take over that orchestrator role on the offense. But I mean, part of it is you got to make shots, because right now I don't see any upside for the defense at this point.
Defense was off,
and I think it's going to continue to be off. I mean, this offense, if it is good, I think it can be really good, and it can be one of the top offenses literally in the ACC. But when it comes to defense,
especially points in the paint, they allowed so many last night in the first half.
I honestly, and that is where size comes into play.
Yes.
Especially with Naheem McLeod was out all of last season with an injury. He's a guy off the bench who has to come in defensively and stop those layups and get those rebounds, because rebounding was also a huge issue last season. So that's definitely something that needs to be worked on.
Eddie Lampkin comes in. Peter Majstorovic comes into the equation. So I think the depth is there, the size is there. But how do they play together?
And you also don't have a ton of mobility, though, down there, which also is an issue.
Very true.
Granted, Lampkin has a great eye, and the fact that he can sort of work at the top of the key, he can work as a little bit of a facilitator as well, but he can't move. Naheem can't move.
Sounds like a lot of guys can't move on the basketball.
And Majstorovic is still very, very young, I think. I think he's still got plenty of room to improve. You saw some of those careless turnovers last night. I think he's got some upside. I think he's a guy you can look out for on this squad. But it goes back to my point. I mean, I think next weekend's Colgate, it's going to come down to, can Syracuse make their shots? Because Colgate's going to make their shots.
We've seen what's happened between those two teams the last few years. Colgate with back-to-back wins, and then Syracuse finally won last year.
Yeah, after Colgate blew a 28-point lead.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Colgate loves to shoot the threes. So that's definitely – and it was interesting to see last season, once Boeheim left, how is Autry going to facilitate this defense? Because we all know what Boeheim did with his 2-3 zone. Last night they started in man. I think – the players got really tired the more the game went on.
They were a step behind for a while.
Yeah, so it's how long can you really keep that up? I'm interested to see how Adrian Autry develops this defense going forward.
Well, you know what? If this team wants to be good, put Colgate in game 2, because that defense will be exposed if they're not on it.
Very, very quickly.
Line, right?
So if I had an imaginary panic button right here, would you press the panic button?
Right now?
I'll say right now. Well, I'll give you two scenarios.
Okay.
Right now, are either of you hitting the panic button?
Yes, I am.
I want to say half yes. If they lost that game last night, yes.
Because I think there's a world, and I think, I said it off the top, I came out pretty hot. I think this team could be 1-1 by a week from now.
So that's
which
the other
is scary.
The other scenario is if Syracuse loses to Colgate, should we all be hitting the panic button for the future of this team?
It's tough.
I'd still say yes.
I mean, I'm almost jumping the gun, because it comes down to, you've got harder non-conference games on the schedule.
So here's the deal.
Colgate's been
to put this in perspective, Syracuse lost 3 non-conference games last year.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that includes Tennessee. That includes really tough
Tennessee,
teams,
Gonzaga,
right? Yep.
2 teams. You're going to have to play Texas.
Texas and Tennessee.
You're going to play Tennessee.
Before the new
You're going to play Maryland also.
So you can't waste those losses.
No, exactly.
It's that simple, but yet it's not simple based on what they showed us last night.
And how much last year did we see some of those losses, really plague the Orange come tournament season and having any sort of resume because, you didn't have a signature win in non-conference play. I mean, you were lucky to escape that Colgate game, a team who ended up making the tournament. But if they would have lost that game, that would have just ruined their resume even more.
Definitely. We'll see what happens going forward, but a big game next Tuesday against Colgate, and it should be another fun one, to be honest, because these two teams the last few years have been fun to watch and match up against each other. All right, enough basketball for now. When we come back, Syracuse football had a big matchup on Saturday, a good comeback win over Virginia Tech. We'll break that down a little bit and dive into what this team needs to do going forward. Newhouse Afternoon back here in just a second on ESPN Syracuse and Q Sports Talk.
Thank you. I forgot to. I think
we should do some more political talk.
More political talk? The funny thing is, I almost said off the top, I think a theory, shout out Jordan, I think a theory for why this team lost, or almost lost, I don't know if you saw Jordan's tweet, there's no media spread at the games. They're giving out vouchers right now, since it's crossover season.
That's what Jish said last night.
Yeah,
at AER.
You get a voucher for the food.
I don't mind that, to be honest. I actually kind of prefer. I prefer that. Because then you can get anything you want.
But sometimes their food is good.
Yeah, that's fine, but you can still at least have variety.
Jordan, I'm on your side. Jordan, I'm on your side with this. I had to deal with it at Clemson. I went down to Clemson for that game, and they had a voucher. It was terrible because, I mean, it's not. Yeah, Clemson did vouchers for the media, and it was terrible because, like, at least Syracuse, I feel like in the dome, a little bit more open. Clemson very enclosed. There's not really an easy way, like up the stairs, to get to the concession stand and then to get back down to the floor.
Yeah. All right, who wants to take round 2?
I can.
Okay.
Sure. Oh, I was going to say, speaking of the national anthem, was at the field hockey game on Friday, which I need to check how they're doing right now. They're in the ACC tournament right now. That's my team.
That is your team.
It's still 1-0. Syracuse is leading. Oh, they're in the fourth quarter. Oh, boy. By the way, they've lost 12 straight times to Virginia.
Really?
Yes.
Damn.
This would probably get them a spot in the NCAA tournament, though, so which would be good. But I was at the field hockey game on Friday. You know how they play the national anthem before every game? They started playing it in the soccer stadium.
Not the field hockey stadium?
Like they hit play, it played in the soccer stadium. So you could hear it from over yonder, and they were all just standing there like.
That's weird.
Because it was obviously not coming from the normal speakers.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. How about them Jets?
Oh yes, those Jets. Listen, and for everyone who thinks I'm this like ultra.
Wait, you guys are. Oh my gosh, you guys are second in the AFC.
I'm not a Jet fan. There's no you guys. But for everyone who thinks like I'm really this Aaron Rodgers like hater, he is on my fantasy team. If anything, I should want and need him to. It's a 2-quarterback league.
Wait, if he's on your fantasy team, why did you want to bench him in week 2?
I was gonna say, why would? Yeah, that's probably what she was talking about, benching him in fantasy.
I can. It's a 2-quarterback league.
That's terrible.
I like 2-quarterback leagues.
I've never. Yeah, you have 3 quarterbacks on your team right now, Nico.
No, I have 1.
You have 3.
Oh, actually, I do have 3 in that one.
You have 3.
Because
you got
because they're all kind of.
You got Flacco, Purdy, and who else? Who's your
Prescott?
starter?
Might be Dak.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All I know is he's not playing next week.
All I know is whatever league we're talking about, I'm not very good in that league.
The Cowboys.
We're against each other next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's your record?
Good.
Good.
Very good.
So I'm in 6 leagues this semester.
Jeez.
I know.
I'm in 3, so.
That's usually what I do.
1, 6 and 3.
Do you regret drafting Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I couldn't do the extra Ian league.
I don't regret it. I have Aaron Rodgers and CJ Stroud who went up against each other, and I lost this week because CJ Stroud had 5 points. This because the Texans have a depleted team, and that's the only reason why the Jets won. What do you want? No Nico Collins? No fun dates? I don't know what you want.
.com. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
Welcome back to Newhouse Afternoon. I'm Dylan Byer with Nico Horning, Max Gifford. Syracuse football had quite the win this past weekend in overtime at the Dome against Virginia Tech. Now,
we should bench them all because it was too close of a game.
It was.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, that was my Dylan imitation for everybody.
I was gonna say, I was gonna ask Dylan this week if Syracuse lost that game.
Oh my
Are the Orange
God.
benching Kyle McCord?
I mean, they'd bench their whole team. They would just clean house.
No, actually.
Bring Aaron Rodgers down from the NFL.
Defend your point, Dylan. Defend your point.
No, you would not bench Kyle McCord because currently CDRW is hurt. So I don't even know the other quarterback that would go in.
Michael Johnson Jr.
There you go.
He played against Holy Cross.
In one of my classes, by the way.
There we go.
Well, who knows what sparked the Syracuse team coming out of that halftime, because that first half was the ugliest half of football I've ever seen this team play this season.
Do we think it was the kicker, the Virginia Tech kicker?
So I was going to say.
He motivated the team?
I'm sure everyone has seen by now, and if you haven't, the Virginia Tech kicker at halftime was kicking field goals while our band was performing, and Fran Brown, post-game, did not like that. That's also something that you just don't do. The Virginia Tech kicker put out an I'm sorry tweet about it. So that's resolved. But
I have a hot take here.
Yep.
I think it was completely fine.
Really?
Well,
I
think
thought
it's
you
fine.
were going to say the opposite because of your experience with
we've seen
instruments.
kickers in the NFL do that.
You can
also.
adjust. You can adjust. You can adjust as a member of the band. As someone who has played in a marching band who has used an instrument, you can adjust.
You are about to have a lot of people coming at you.
No, but
what I will say is, I think it was more about the spot on the field that he was. He was like practicing like 60-yarders.
So did you guys see this like over the weekend? 'Cause I didn't see it till yesterday.
So I had someone send me a video of it. I was not there. Someone originally. So I was working the radio broadcast, and someone on the radio said, "Oh, the fans are booing," and they're like, "Well, they're not booing the team. They're booing the kicker."
Gotcha. So you saw what happened?
Yeah,
Was the kicker like yelling at the band?
No,
he was just there.
He was literally
thing?
just
Okay.
doing his kicking field.
Well, I think
and
that's normal.
And the
to
band
an
member
extent.
didn't quite know what to do. Again, that might be a hot take because I mean.
So what was the band
they had
doing?
The band was doing their routine for
routine.
halftime. They were doing
Okay.
their Halloween show for halftime.
So they were just trying not to get not get hit by the
I think
football at the end of the day.
I
don't know how close. Like I didn't see the video.
I think. I mean, we can stop this conversation after my point. But what I'm saying is, the band member was trying to, I think he was waiting for the kicker to move, and he didn't. So I don't think the band member just thought about oh, how do I go around him? Huh.
Well, nevertheless,
All respect to the SU band. They're a great band.
Syracuse gets its 6th win and is bowl bound. But my question is, I mean, personally, I still have some worries about this team. Even though you're 6-2 now, you have a huge schedule coming up, very, very important games, and I'm still not confident in this team.
Well, it's funny you brought up the bowl game and the 6 wins because the last couple of years, those 6 wins have been a huge milestone for this team. Now it's like, oh, they're going bowling.
Yeah,
it's normal now.
It's normal.
So that's a good problem, first off. Now the challenges have elevated, I think, with this team because you have a Kyle McCord, because things are just so much more risen than they have been in the last couple of years. But the way this team is winning is not what anyone thought it would be.
No.
It's weird. They're coming back. Things aren't going right to start, but then they fix it up. A lot of different variables are happening right now, and this past weekend was another example of that. But credit to the team. I mean, they found a way to win, kind of similar to basketball from last night. Granted, Virginia Tech's a better opponent than Lemoyne. I thought it was a decent win at the end of the day. What does this mean going forward? I can't answer that quite yet.
So I think one of the biggest scares would have been if Syracuse would have lost that game to Virginia Tech. Would be the question of oh, here we go again. Is this deja vu of November football?
Right.
Because Syracuse and why Dino Babers was fired is because they were so bad in November and they could not win games for late season. And Kyle McCord has talked about how Syracuse cannot replicate those results. They cannot replicate what Syracuse football has done in the past. So the fact that you pick up a win at the beginning of November is good. But I think your point, that milestone of 6 wins, I think it's good. I just think this team probably doesn't want to end up in the Boca Raton Bowl again. They don't want to end up going to the Pinstripe Bowl again, which I think there's 3 outlets that are predicting Syracuse in the Pinstripe Bowl.
Yeah, unfortunately. They can't get out of this rut of the mediocre bowl games. And
Yes.
that's that next step you want to take as a program. I don't know when they're going to do it, to be honest with you, at this point, because McCord's gone. I don't know what the future of this team is like. It has to be this year.
The answer is this season.
Yep.
Where my mind is so confused is we're obviously in a new era of Syracuse football because it's the fact that Syracuse even won this game after being down 14-3 at the half. And in the Dino Babers era, without Kyle McCord, this team just loses that game. Your backups come in.
They would roll over. Correct.
But at the same point, it's Virginia Tech's starting running back didn't play virtually the whole game. Their second string quarterback played. Great player, very experienced player. But the fact that they struggled this much against backups, and you look at their upcoming schedule, you have Cal, you have Miami, even BC this weekend. That's a very tough game for Syracuse historically because of that rivalry. I don't know what else this team needs to do because when you're looking at bowl games, the reason why they're projected to go to the Pinstripe Bowl is because they're struggling against teams that on paper they really shouldn't struggle against.
I'll push back against that just a little, and I totally understand. It's like, yeah, they won, but Virginia Tech didn't have their starting quarterback, starting running back. Syracuse,
they were hot. They won 3 in a row.
Syracuse doesn't have film on these guys. I think that's something that goes unnoticed. Sure, these players might not be as skilled.
Good point.
But I mean, their backup quarterback hadn't played he hadn't played at all for Virginia Tech. They had no idea. And Virginia Tech, give them a lot of credit, did a great job not hinting the fact that, Kyron Drones was not going to play. So I don't really think Syracuse had the opportunity to prepare as much as they probably maybe could have to, face guys like Virginia Tech's backup and of course their backup running back as well without Byshell Toot.
That's a good point. I agree. I don't think I think these backups, and this could be for any sport too, but if someone comes into the game and you're preparing all week for this other guy or this star, the sleeper could end up doing better than you think. And I think that Virginia Tech did that last weekend.
Goes back to that Clemson game with Cade Klubnik a couple years ago, pulling DJ out of the game.
You always find a way to bring that up. I think that loss really hurt you.
I'm so convinced that this team would have had game day the next week if they beat Clemson.
Yes,
true.
They would have.
True.
I mean, that was one of the coolest games I've watched. First halves of football I've ever watched.
That was a great game.
And then Elijah Fuentes-Cundiff just getting that penalty.
What a run, by the way, for that team.
Yeah.
That was incredible. So you brought up the schedule for a minute.
Yeah.
And we had done this a few weeks ago. It was probably about a month ago by now. But now that month has passed. And now we know what the future of this team is like. Few games remaining. And in my opinion, to have anything better than a mediocre bowl game, you have to win out. You got to beat Miami.
You're not beating Miami. That's
fine if you're not beating Miami. I was saying you have to beat Miami.
That's not discrediting Syracuse. That's crediting Miami.
Miami's kind of been like Syracuse, though. They've had very slow starts in some games. They were losing to Duke at one point. The score does not reflect that one bit. They ended up 60-piecing the Blue Devils. But Miami hasn't necessarily been the most, convincing number 5 team in the nation in the world.
No,
almost lost to Cal.
But they
almost lost to some other teams. Yeah, you're right. They didn't. But, it goes back to, I was talking about it last week with the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs still won last night, and that's all you're going to look at. You're going to look at the fact they're undefeated. They're not going to ask you how you won.
Right.
They won.
It's true.
A win is a win.
I think the Miami Hurricanes you could equivalate to you could make that the Kansas City Chiefs of the NCAA just because they have a great quarterback and that's really the person leading the charge for this team.
Yeah, well, looking at it from Syracuse perspective, the reason why I am hesitant to say that Syracuse can win out is, look at this Virginia Tech game. They relied heavily on Justice Ross Simmons, who had his first season reception was for a touchdown. He had 2 touchdowns in that game. But where did Aronde Gaston go? Where did Trevor Pena go? Where did Umari Hatcher go? Where did Dan Villari go? I haven't seen a game. Well, I just haven't seen a full offense-fledged game where if the wide receivers are on, LaQuinn Allen's also on. It's one guy shining and the rest are quiet. And going forward, this weekend against BC, Cal, UConn, I'm writing that off as a win. And especially versus Miami, which you're saying they have to win now. All guys on your offense need to be on, which I just have not seen this season. The fact that your star weapons went quiet versus Virginia Tech concerns me.
I think we've seen it on certain drives this year. We've seen it on plenty of drives. It just hasn't been consistent. And like you bring up, that Georgia Tech game, by the way, earlier in the season, the way McCord came out and threw the ball, even though LeQuint wasn't as involved, I thought that was a great look offensively. Now, they did have to get Allen involved, and I think they have gotten LeQuint Allen involved. UNLV, another great example. Towards the end of the game, getting Allen involved. What did he finish with? 4 touchdowns that game.
Yep.
Just a ridiculous stat line. So I think there's been bits and pieces here and there where the offense has shown what they can do. It just hasn't come in the form of every player. It's been a lot of McCord doing the uplifting of the other teammates. So.
Yeah, and I just don't want to see this team rely so heavily on the run game because every opponent they go against has a great rush defense. And in those moments, that's why you brought Kyle McCord to Syracuse, because of his arm strength. And so often I think they rely too heavily on LaQuinn Allen, who is a great running back and who can lead this team to victory and has, and we've seen that. But I say it every week, I'd like to see more from McCord's arm.
So you've changed your mind from a month ago. Because remember, you wanted LaQuinn Allen to get more involved.
Because I wanted him to get in because he didn't have a touchdown. to that
Yes,
point where I was like, and I think he has gotten going, but now it's
But this was the first game where they took a step back with McCord. I mean, he didn't throw over 300 yards.
right.
He didn't throw as much.
But so this is a question now. Do you think it's because he's thrown a lot of interceptions this season that they're hesitant? They don't.
I sure hope not, because
they
for the amount of times you're throwing the ball, you're gonna throw some to the other team.
I mean, here's
That's
the
just
thing.
the nature of the game.
Here's the thing. You have the most passing attempts in all of between all Power 4 quarterbacks. You're gonna throw interceptions.
Of course, I don't blame McCord for any interception he's thrown. I'm more wondering if sometimes, especially late in games, they relied more on Allen because I'm not saying there's a distrust.
I could see that. I could see that point. I just hope that's not how it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're Coach Brown, if you're this coaching staff, you repeatedly say you have trust in McCord. You trust in McCord. Well, it's got to show on the field in that instance too.
Well, it's not.
It's
not even trust in McCord. It's trust in your receivers at this point. Is he not throwing the ball? Because I mean, Pena was dropping balls all throughout the first half of this game, and finally he got going in the second half. But I'd like to see this team, and especially individually players, play more cohesively into their skill level.
I think it's a good point. There's just been so many times this year where certain individual players have a great outing, but then other guys don't pick it up, or there's a couple drop passes, or just the little things that they're not doing well. But they got 3 games to get right before Miami.
Right.
And I think those are the biggest opportunities for this team to see where they can go going forward.
And in Fran Brown's press conference this week, what I love that he's saying is, listen, if someone's not playing up to their ability, I'm putting the next man in, because everyone deserves a chance to play, because I see how hard these guys work day in and day out. So the fact that there's always someone else to take your spot, and he makes that very known. And Fran Brown, as the nicest guy he is, he's also the meanest guy, because if a guy doesn't deserve to play, he'll bench you, because he knows that someone's ready to take your spot.
I love it. I
don't have much else. Thanks.
Well, when we come back, we talked a little about it. They have a big game, a rival game at BC this weekend. We'll preview that game right here on QSports.com and ESPN Radio right when we come back.
This is Orange Nation.
This guy goes, thanks.
I thought the conversation really sort of died down at the end. I was like, I think we need to get out of here.
I'm sweating. This is why I can't deal with this weather.
You don't like the sun and 75 degrees?
Nope.
Don't come to San Diego.
Yeah. What was I gonna add? I got all my takes at the beginning of the blog, and I was like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah. Nice job. We got to do a pick to click for both. You want to do football and basketball?
Sure.
Okay.
Ooh, I haven't thought of my pick to click for football yet.
Gwen Allen.
Got to start with
I don't know who
Got to start with
it
the biggest
has
news
to
ever,
be.
though. Syracuse field hockey did beat Virginia.
Oh, Max is hyped.
First time since 2015, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, you know what? I'm going to do what you just did. I'm going to say thanks. I don't have much else.
Who's my pick to click? I don't know.
That's not good.
Are we doing a field hockey pick to click now for postseason?
No, they're not going to win against North Carolina.
Oh, they play North Carolina?
Yeah, they're going to get. Not going to get. They'll get
Hey,
crushed.
never say never.
Yeah, Max.
Yeah, no, I'll say never. This team's that team's really good.
Did you see
They were
Texas A&M lost last night to UCF in
Yeah, I did.
basketball?
Wasn't it to Ohio State?
No, they
Or
lost to
Texas?
UCF.
And then they stormed the court, and everyone's like, they shouldn't be storming the court first game of the season.
Why not?
You beat a top 10 team.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you should.
yeah,
I agree. No,
definitely should.
I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Shout out the Buckeyes, though. By the way, you were talking about bands earlier. The best damn band in the land.
Yeah, Ohio State. Yeah. I'll support Ohio State until a couple weeks when they play Indiana.
That's been a good game.
You're an Indiana fan? How could you not be an Indiana fan this
Sig
season?
10, baby. It's the Sig 10.
So what's the record?
They're undefeated.
Undefeated.
Right. Which
Haven't
is like,
lost.
What, are they 7-0 now? 8-0?
They're crazy.
9-0.
Is it 9? Are we that far into the season?
Yeah, they're 9-0.
You know who I love that Michigan just flat out is not good.
So,
this season.
I love it.
Love
so,
it.
so,
Buckeyes fan, I
so,
love it.
so Indiana's playing Michigan this week. It's the
Oh,
first time the
huge.
Hoosiers, they're double-digit favorites. First time they've ever been favored in a game against Michigan since the 60s.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Huh. Yeah.
That's wild.
Wild above Penn State.
Yeah, well,
Ohio State.
that's why that Ohio State game is huge, because if they don't beat Indiana,
But to be fair,
'cause
who has Indiana played?
they've played
Max is
Nebraska,
Max is like,
a team that Ohio State almost lost to.
Okay. I'm just saying.
no, I love it. I love it.
They
Keep
beat-
going. Keep
Who
going.
has-
Keep
who
going.
has-
They
Indiana
beat
played?
Washington.
That was
So
a good
so
team
so
2
here's the
years
argument
ago.
I made. Here's the argument I made.
All right, here we go.
Well, here's the thing. It's less about who you beat. It's more about how much you beat them by.
No, I disagree.
Oh no, what?
I
mean, you can win your games pretty handily. Look at this. Oop, that's basketball, not football. Not even ESPN wants me to.
Oh, you play Michigan this weekend.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But 47-10, 31-17, 56-7, 41-24, 42-28, 52-14, 42-13, 77-3, and 31-7. No games have been close.
Yeah.
They were also trailing to Michigan.
77-3 against West Illinois.
Okay, every team plays bad opponents to start the season.
I don't
That's
know.
not the
I'm
difference.
just.
Look at Ohio
They have
State.
Michigan
So-
and Ohio State coming up.
Why is Indiana this good all of a sudden?
Because
I
of Kurt
don't-
Cignetti.
I don't know.
Kurt Cignetti is a way better coach. He's brought in his guys. And they're a relentless team. Yeah, so it was, Ohio State beat Nebraska 21-17. Indiana beat them 56-7 by almost 50 points.
I don't know.
I don't know. They also, they beat Michigan State 38-7. Indiana beat them 47-10.
Listen, I'm just saying.
I'm not saying it's an easy game at the shoe. I mean, they're probably going to lose, but it's not going to be a cakewalk.
Watch your favorite ESPN Syracuse sports talk shows on QSportsTalk.com. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
Rolling along here on Newhouse Afternoon. Max Gifford, Dylan Byer, Nico Horning. We've talked basketball, we've talked football, we've talked the weather, we've talked elections. I mean, that's what you get here on Newhouse Afternoon right here on ESPN Radio and Q Sports Talk. You get your entire news fix for the day. You also get your sports fix. We've talked plenty of sports. We've talked plenty of news. Now it's time to talk the future a little because Syracuse plays Boston College this Saturday. We'll also get into a little bit of a preview, talk about Syracuse men's basketball against Colgate. We talked a lot about the Virginia Tech game last time out, and this is a Eagles team that Syracuse is facing that has lost 3 straight games, so very different from the Hokies who had some momentum coming in. I mean, another game, it'll be the, second of 3 straight games in the CW for Syracuse at noon. Well, this one's at noon. The Cal game's next week at 3. But on the road once again against BC, I guess some initial thoughts on what the Eagles would look like.
Well, first of all, I don't know who works at ESPN to make the matchup predictors, but they have BC at a 63% chance to win this game, which I cannot understand or wrap my head around because, like you just said, look,
That's wild.
63.3%. Boston College is on a 3-game losing streak, one including Virginia Tech.
Do me a favor.
This makes no sense.
Do me a favor. Go and see what Syracuse is saying, or go see what ESPN is saying for Syracuse against UConn, because I don't think Syracuse is like the biggest favorite in that game either.
Yeah, but this game, it doesn't. I get it. It's at Boston College, but still, Syracuse 64% against UConn.
Still,
I think it's the
64%.
home. It's got to be the home field. That's the only reason.
I mean, BC's
buy that.
BC's only a 2-point favorite at home though. You got to think. I mean,
63%. Syracuse has the momentum, right? I mean,
Yeah.
overtime
Yes.
win.
I honestly, I
get-
do not know. I don't have an answer.
know. So someone at ESPN, please
Yeah, reach out to Dylan Byer.
reach out to me. Let me know. I want to hear your thoughts about this because I can't understand.
What about Aaron Rodgers and
Well, we'll get into that later. But something that I love that Fran Brown said going into BC week is, I mean, this could be like a senior yearbook quote. He said, "I don't want to allow victory to defeat us." I mean, that's a great quote. I love it. I wrote it down, and I think it's so true. Yes,
sounds like a bumper sticker. So it could be a good bumper sticker.
Once now that they have the momentum, you can't let that get to your head all of a sudden, because this team does take a lot of penalties. Not everyone's on all the time. The rivalry against BC is insane. Fran Brown pointed out
rivalry.
Why do you say rivalry?
It's not a rivalry.
I disagree.
Syracuse football and rivalry are not like those aren't in the same conversation. They don't have a rivalry.
I would say
with Boston College.
That's what everyone says.
If anything, Pitt is the rivalry because they played them 80 times.
Yeah,
if anything, Clemson's the rivalry.
What? Clemson?
Because Syracuse has beat Clemson a couple times last.
You've been drinking you've been drinking
No.
the Syracuse fair-weather fan Kool-Aid.
The games have been close.
You must think that Syracuse's best basketball rivalry is Duke as well.
No, it's not.
Oh, but it's not Georgetown. I remember you're very you're very anti the Georgetown rivalry.
Who is Syracuse basketball's rivalry?
Colgate?
Duke.
Honestly, Colgate.
No, it's not.
Duke is not. Duke is not a rival.
It started yesterday.
It's
Lemoyne.
Duke and Georgetown.
Duke is not a rival. Duke is not a rival.
Yeah, guys.
It can't be a rivalry if it's one-sided.
What are you talking? Of course, it's a rivalry.
Syracuse basketball's new rivalry is
Coach
Lemoyne.
K, Coach Boeheim rivalry. That's been a rivalry, and then Georgetown, Syracuse.
They only played.
It's not a rivalry anymore, though.
Oh my God!
They only played against each other for like 10 years.
It was a rivalry. Now it's not.
They only coached against each other for 10 years. Right. It wasn't that much because Syracuse wasn't in the ACC with them.
I would debate you in saying just because a rivalry is one-sided and a team typically tends to dominate does not still make these two teams in their histories rivalries.
I would
disagree.
Any sense? What are you saying?
I think if you look at football, right? Let's take Michigan and Ohio State for example. Ohio State's won quite a few of the last contests, but Michigan's won the last 2 years.
It's still a rivalry, though. That's
exactly.
the way it's broadcasted.
But that's also
the way it's put out.
We're talking about Michigan and Ohio State, not Syracuse football.
Okay, but why is Boston College a rivalry?
It just is.
Says who?
That's just what's been saying forever.
Who's saying
I've never
this?
heard that before. Have you heard that before?
No.
Please look it up.
Right.
I'm not crazy. Everywhere. Fran Brown said in his press conference, I know the
I think there's the
rivalry
argument to be
between
made that
these two
Virginia Tech
teams.
is more of a rivalry than Boston College.
I think you guys are focusing on it in the years who has come, who.
Okay, well, obviously no one.
The best against
Let's go to that. No one obviously cares about it because it's on the CW at 12 o'clock. So nobody cares about this game, regardless.
Rivalries also have to do with proximity to each other.
Okay, that brings up my next point. Just so you know, off of Wikipedia, Syracuse and Colgate football is a rivalry.
Wikipedia, which gets edited by anyone who wants to edit.
Which has the fan vote.
Has the fan vote?
Yep.
I'm just.
He made a good point.
Thank you.
No, I don't think so.
All right, what about basketball?
Well, what do you What, like the
it's
dome?
Not Duke.
The dome.
It's not Duke.
Of course.
Someone in our chat is saying Syracuse basketball's clear rival is Georgetown. That is 100% correct.
Right. It's
football doesn't have a rivalry. That's my take.
It's Duke or Georgetown. If you don't want to say Duke, fine, but you have to say Georgetown.
I've come around to agree with that more this year than I did last year. I'm not saying I 100% agree, but I'd say it's probably at this point the bigger rivalry over Duke. I'll give you that.
Okay, everyone in the chat, feel free to go out. Feel free to go at Nico.
Yeah,
I mean, the
they
Duke
are
game
rivalry.
is always sold out. It's always
okay,
advertised.
But Duke's really good.
Okay, but
that's why.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, just because we sell it out doesn't mean anything. Syracuse fans have shown they are, especially the students. Let's go back to the Virginia Tech game. They were terrible. They didn't show up.
And you're in the chat. Please comment if you think Syracuse-Duke is a rivalry, especially when they come to the Dome. Please.
No, we need to stop talking about that because we want to talk about the other rivalry that you mentioned in Syracuse and Boston College.
It's not a rivalry. It's not a rivalry.
It doesn't sound like we're going to get into much of the X's and O's of the game now because we've gone on to this giant tangent that Dylan has gone on, which is just a horrible bridge to die on.
I had to go down this path because saying that Syracuse-Duke or Syracuse-Georgetown isn't a rivalry is absolutely insane. I just couldn't get over it. But focusing on, now we're going to focus back on this rivalry in Syracuse football.
The tone change was so good there.
Versus BC. I 100% think Syracuse has the momentum. They cannot get in their heads. No discredit to BC, but they're on a 3-game losing streak. This is Syracuse's perfect opportunity to take advantage of BC struggles and keep pushing. Get LaQuinn Allen involved. Get Fadil Diggs. Keep doing what he does in sacking and the turnovers. And if there's one thing in this team that has to get going, it's the special teams, which I can't believe I'm saying for like the second or third show in the row. There's too many mishaps on the Syracuse special teams.
I think no matter what category you want to point at for Saturday, it's got to be the entire team actually getting going to start the game. You got to win the first quarter. That's the game. If they fall behind again, I don't know if they can come back.
Right. I would almost argue you can't go 3 and out on your first.
But I'd
drive.
argue
you have to put some
against Boston College. I'd argue you kind of can because they haven't shown any consistency.
Right. You could essentially, but you need to start fast. For the same, even if you end up being Boston College,
you would like to start fast.
Yes.
So it's not a repeat, and you do the same thing
again,
week in and week out.
Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, these next 3 games are getting you prepared for Miami. And if Syracuse drops any of the next 3 games, they're done.
And Cal's a very good team right before Miami. Cal must beat Miami.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
There's no easy test.
No.
But I'm saying in perspective, if you want this team to jump from the Pinstripe Bowl to something, that's how you got to approach these next 3 games.
Okay, so then in that approach, this actually parlays in pretty nicely. What individuals need to stick out? So I guess this comes to the drum roll, pick to click. You can start us off, Nico. I picked yours last time out.
Sure.
So you can pick mine too if you want, because I took yours last time.
Yeah, that's right, you did. Face of the franchise, Cal McCord.
Yeah, I swear to God, you're in my head and you're listening to my inner thoughts every week.
Okay, well, Dylan, I think you've picked Cal McCord like 3 straight weeks at this point.
Wait, I actually can't because the last time I picked Cal McCord, he threw like 5 interceptions.
You did say that.
I'm picking McCord.
I'm actually not doing that.
I'm picking McCord to limit those interceptions. This guy, he's got to take care of the ball a little bit more. But people also have to realize that mistakes are going to happen because he's throwing the ball at such a high volume. I think that his leadership, his getting towards the end of the season experience with Ohio State has got to translate here to Syracuse. If you look at Ohio State, right, what are you preparing for all season? Michigan, the last game of the year. That's how you got to approach this game because they're taking on the 4th-ranked Miami Hurricanes, and you have 3 more games to best prepare yourself for that game. Let's say Syracuse does lose one of the next 3 games. Okay, you still have Miami to play. If you can beat Miami at all, that would be a win of a season. Yeah. So that's why McCord's got to be the pick to the click, or the pick to click.
Pick to the click.
Pick to the click. I kind of like that. Maybe we'll rename it. But I'm going McCord.
So I won't go McCord. I'll be original this week.
McCord Allen.
No,
like you said about
my pick to click is going to be Aronde Gadsden. And if you're Fran Brown, you're disagreeing with me right now.
I respect that.
Because Aronde Gadsden gets double teamed almost every game because every opposition knows that he's a threat. The problem is that great tight ends, as he's listed, we all know my take. I don't think he's a tight end because they use him as a wide receiver. But they find a way out of that double coverage, and they find a way to get open. Fran Brown has said if we can find a way to win without Aronde Gadsden, he's okay with it, and I'm okay with it. And sure, while I'm okay with it, he is such a weapon, and for him not to only have 2 receptions in a game, I think you're undermining his talent. I think he needs to be targeted more, so he is my pick to click.
I was going to say these last couple games, and even you could argue this season, I think he's been used as a tight end. He's done more blocking than he has catching footballs at this point.
True, I just think usually they use him as a wide receiver, so I don't like labeling him as just a tight end.
All right, so Dylan went a little different. She actually was original this week. no Kyle McCord pick. And I guess following suit, because I seem to pick someone not on the offensive end, I'm going to continue that trend. My pick to click, Deuce Chestnut. I really liked what I saw out of him last game. I think this was a real big stepping stone for him after coming back from LSU to Syracuse. I think, some timely plays against Virginia Tech is what I think against the Orange, expected out of him a little more. And I think this is when he can start to emerge sort of with that really good defense that we've seen out of guys like Marlowe Wax and Justin Barron. So having, that momentum built off even more. I mean, how many times have we talked about different defensive players each week with Fadil Diggs, with Justin Barron, with Marlowe Wax? I think Deuce Chestnut sort of that next guy to complete sort of that Mount Rushmore of this Syracuse defense. And I think you talk about a guy like Thomas Castellanos, who has struggled a lot for the Eagles lately. He's been inconsistent. The only way to keep him inconsistent is to have good coverage. And I think Deuce Chestnut needs to be sort of that spearhead for this Orange squad.
Totally with you. So Chestnut defensively, maybe he's been a bit of a sleeper this year because other guys have been talked about so much. Gadsden, there's been other receivers kind of, getting their role done this year. And then McCord, obviously the leader of the franchise. So I think, honestly, everyone had a decent pick this week.
Good job, guys.
All right. Well, unfortunately, Dylan spent so much time talking about the rivalry, so we'll have to wait for next week's show to maybe talk about this Syracuse men's basketball game against Colgate. We're up against one more break here on Newhouse Afternoon. When we come back, we'll say goodbye after spending an hour with you. This is Newhouse Afternoon on ESPN Radio and Q Sports Talk. Just fine. Yeah, so people did sound off in the chat. People did say SU football, Virginia Tech. I mentioned, I think that's a bigger rivalry than SUBC.
People are also saying that basketball is Georgetown.
Yeah, Mickey JC 123. I totally agree. I feel like Duke is always just feels like a rival. Just feels like that to students.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Syracuse and Duke can feel like a rivalry for the first half, and then it's.
So this is a bigger discussion that I don't think.
But rivalry equals history. It doesn't equal present time.
I think this was a bigger discussion that doesn't necessarily need to happen on the show. Students so disappointed in the students on Saturday at the Virginia Tech game. You got to show up.
Agreed.
You got to show up.
As someone who has been to every football game besides last weekend, I will say that it's hard to make it to a 12 o'clock game when it's Halloween.
No excuses.
Do you think? All right. So everyone might have had a little too much sugar on Halloween weekend. That happens. Everyone has just a little too much. But my point with that and what I'm saying is, do you think Penn State? You think they didn't?
Exactly.
Do you think they didn't? You think they didn't go out? And you think they didn't show up for game day at 3 a.m.?
How many people go to Penn State? How many students do they have?
Why does that matter?
Because there's more people to go to Penn State. There's more locals to go to Penn State than there is Syracuse.
Trust me, the fans who are actually, here in Syracuse, they showed up.
Penn State is.
The students didn't show up.
I mean, the upper level was pretty empty.
That's what I'm saying.
But it wasn't just the students. It wasn't just the students.
Was completely empty.
Yeah, but there are also other sections.
Syracuse is a very small school compared to Penn State.
Okay, but I would also argue the students especially are such fair-weathered fans that, you have a good football team this year.
Yeah.
You have a good football team this year. Go and support the team. And sure, Halloween weekend, that's a thing. But you can also party, go to bars any other day. You only have the chance to be a student in the student section once.
The problem is not everyone is as passionate about football than they are.
But they don't show up to basketball games either. They are going to show up to Duke and North Carolina, and they're going to act like the biggest Syracuse fans ever. That's it. It's the only games they're going to go to.
I have nothing else to add. Thanks. That's a good point.
And especially as two people who don't get to go to games, very consistently at least, it was fun when we got to go to games. I didn't miss a football game my freshman year.
Devil's advocate.
Our football team to start with. That was so fun.
And we had a bad football team.
Not to start with.
To play devil's advocate, and I've been to every game. Basketball's harder because it's like a random Wednesday at 6 p.m. So
that's fair.
Those basketball games are a little harder to go to. Football, I'm in agreement. That it was the first game I missed this season. I know it's horrible. I would be the difference maker. I know no excuses at all.
Kids got to learn how to rally.
I will say I told my parents that if that Miami game is important, I will be coming back early Thanksgiving break to be in the Dome for that game.
Now that is a fan.
That's commitment.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to say that a lot of fans aren't going to agree with you, and they're not going to be back for the game.
If it's an important game, I'll be there.
You know what? And that's great. And I think, you probably stand out amongst probably the others.
It's a Saturday game. School starts back Monday. You can make it.
I'm not going to be there, so.
Yeah, I won't be there either.
I'll be in a plane.
Oh.
I'll be on a plane.
Now all of a sudden.
Well, I also wouldn't go to the game anyway.
True.
Yeah.
True.
My brother goes to Miami, so there's family rivalry
there we go.
So.
That's good.
Well, we'll see if Syracuse is 3-0 until then or not.
It's gonna be tough.
I don't know. That's been my take that's been lingering over the past week, that we have terrible fans.
Fair. I think
student fans. Student fans.
I think I'm rubbing off on Max.
I think the adult fans are awesome. Sorry, I get heated. It's That's how we'll end this. That's how we'll end this show.
Point one. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
Wrapping up shop here on Newhouse Afternoon. This hour of Newhouse Afternoon is powered by Drivers Village Cicero. Go to dvoffers.com for more info. Nico Horning, Dylan Beyer, Max Gifford. Guys, it's been a fun one. Rivalry talk, weather, politics. I think we've covered pretty much everything.
Jordan just coined my new nickname, Max the Menace. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think we'll carry that into the next show, which will be in a couple of weeks, so be sure to join us then. But thank you so much for joining us on this hour of Newhouse Afternoon. We'll be back, and we'll see you soon.
The three